Hello, everyone, and welcome back to this holiday edition of Anchor Watch. I am your humble host, Bobby Jones. And first and foremost, I hope everybody is having a wonderful Thanksgiving week. I hope you travel to your destination safe. This is the number one travel week of the year, and we've seen airport outages due to weather, etc. So please remember, it's about getting there safely, not just getting there swiftly. That being said, there's a lot of stuff that I want to talk about real quick, and I don't want to hold you too long because it is a holiday week. But either we have the most intense case of amnesia in this country, or we have the worst writer for political theater I've ever seen, and I'll explain here in a second. But first, let me bring in our good buddy and producer extraordinaire, Sam. Sam, how you doing?
Hey, buddy, how you doing?
Well, I'm confused. And again, I'm a simple-minded person, but I'm confused. So if you've been living under a rock, um, there were 6 Democratic senators that decided to put out a video, kind of like a public service announcement, where they were talking about and reminding service members, active duty military for the United States, to remember their oath and not to execute illegal orders, right? That was the 6 were Chris Deluzio, Maggie Goodlander, Chrissy Houlahan, Jason Crow, Elissa Slotkin, and Mark Kelly. All of them are veterans in federal service, like 5 are military, and then Slotkin was CIA. You would have thought that they had threatened a terrorist attack based on the reaction of the right. And it started with the president, Donald Trump. Can we bring up his tweet?
Yep.
This, and then later he also said that, death, sedition, and death. But what I love, anytime he says many anything, many people, many scholars, many this, that, and the other, he never names just one, because the many people he's talking about are the voices in his head. That's the many. Okay. Now, Sam, I don't know if you're aware of this. Those who have not served in the military may not be aware of this, but from day one of boot camp, your accession source, whatever, you are trained and taught that the military is an apolitical organization, that you take an oath to the Constitution of the United States and its principles. You do not, I repeat, do not take an oath to a person. There are no kings, no tyrant, etc. And the reason this is such a thing is because the whole premise and creation of the United States was built on the concept that we do not abide by what one individual person thinks. Now, Sam, and I need to get your opinion before I really get knee deep into the ridiculous of this. You've seen clips of the video. You've seen the video. Did you think there was anything that was traitorous or seditious in it from a civilian standpoint?
From no standpoint. I mean, objectively, this was like saying, your mom saying, hey, if your friend asks you to rob a bank, you say no, right? That's objectively a fact-based argument and orders you should follow. In this case, they said they essentially restated the facts, right? And I think Trump is showing his ass a little bit here when he says, "Oh, they shouldn't obey illegal orders, but those are the only orders I give." Right?
Well, and make no mistake, we will get into the legality thing. I did a whole piece on it this past week. But here's what I want people to focus on. I'm old enough to remember that there were 1,600 charged individuals when the actual United States Capitol was under attack on January 6, 2021.
Yes.
And the president of the United States, who wants death who wants death to 6 senators who are basically repeating basic boot camp training. 2 service members pardoned 1,600 people who literally were going to hang the vice president of the United States, who was
Right.
going to drag the speaker of the former speaker of the House out and beat her down, that were going to disrupt the peaceful transfer of power. Many of those 1,600 that were pardoned have been arrested on separate charges, ranging from assault and battery to child pornography. Those guys get a pardon. And yet you have the president, followed by the most insecure man in Washington, D.C., Pete Hegseth,
Oh my God.
talking about recalling Senator Kelly so he can be court-martialed and then reduced in rank and have his pension eliminated. The unmitigated balls for them to say this. A 5-time draft dodger and drinking McDrink, going after this guy, a guy, combat veteran, combat pilot, freaking astronaut, and who, by the way, whose wife was almost killed because of an assassination attempt where she was grievously wounded and will never be the same. So he's lived the political violence. He's put his own person on the line for this country. Him and his brother became astronauts. I mean, stayed in space so long, they actually shrunk in height. Okay? And you want to recall him, Major. Couldn't go farther than Major because, got a drinking problem, an assault problem, an adultery problem. People wouldn't follow you out of a goddamn grocery bag. But that's what you're going to do. That's what you want to do.
Well, I got to ask you this because.
Yeah, sure.
And I'm sorry to cut you off there, but it's, you talk about the leadership. And it feels like every week, Bobby, on this show, we have another article or another exhibit in the case against Pete Kegsbreath being a terrible leader. And whether it was from the top brass coming, to Washington to see him do a PowerPoint presentation, whatever. So when is the last straw? And how does this, when your heroes or when the men and women who served above you or retired even before you were in the service, but still have a name, who are leaders in their community, in their country, when you see that this is how they get repaid, what does that do to an enlisted person?
Well, it gives you pause. You wonder who the heck is leading you. So here's a couple of things. I'm glad we're going to focus on Hegseth here for a second.
Yeah.
Number one, if you've noticed the discussions, and we'll get into this a little bit later about Ukraine and Russia and the United States, Hegseth is nowhere to be found. This is an actual war, and your Secretary of Defense sidelined. Okay. Talking about the massive buildup off the coast of Venezuela. Any comments from the Secretary of Defense? No. Once again, sidelined. You've seen Rubio talk about it. You've seen the Secretary of Treasury talk about it, but you haven't seen the Secretary of Defense. He has effectively been neutered, Sam.
Yeah,
and so because he's been neutered, they're like, hey, sick him on Kelly and all this other stuff. That means nothing. That has no weight. That would not happen, would not have any weight. There's no, let's say they recalled him and sent him to court martial. There's no goddamn group of 12 senior military officers going to be like, yeah, this guy deserves it. Are you kidding me? No. So it's all posturing because he's been neutered. He's looking for his testicular fortitude, and there are none to be found in real things. None to be found. And here's the thing. The United States Army figured this out about him a decade ago, which is why they did not promote him to 05, which is why they did not give him company command, which is why he was not Ranger Tab, which is why he did not do all of the basic things that a quality Army officer is supposed to do. And those who can't, then they just go and talk about it. But if you want to be honest, that's what it is. Let me ask you this question. Hegseth has been in the public limelight for a few years now. Forget just Secretary of Defense, right?
Yep.
Have you seen any of his former compatriots that served with him in uniform come up and speak on his behalf?
I didn't even think about that.
I'll wait.
What? You
Because
just
think about it
blew
like
my
this.
mind.
Every veteran that has been appointed to a public office or has ran for public office, they usually have a couple of their boys or girls say something good about them and their leadership and what it was like when they were in uniform. I've never seen anybody do it for Hegseth.
Wow.
Never. That's a telltale sign. It is a telltale sign. So here you have a guy who it's obvious the people that served with him did not respect him. The people who served under him do not respect him. The people that serve under him looking for separate legal advice.
And his own mother? You remember that?
And his own mother blasting him before she had to retract it so he can get this position, talking about what a disappointment he is. He's going after someone who literally, if you embody Captain America, it's probably Mark Kelly.
Yeah, right.
I mean, his entire adult life has been service at great personal sacrifice. His wife damn near paying the ultimate price for trying to talk to her constituents and was gunned down, right? And he had to help her through that rehab process. Sacrifice after sacrifice after sacrifice that him and his entire family, like I said, his brother, an astronaut, his wife, everything that Hegseth ain't. Heck, Hegseth's been married 3 times, multiple kids, different times of kids. All the morality is staggering, or lack thereof. And like I said, you compare that to the president of the United States and his issues personally.
Yeah.
Hegseth is just him 2.0. So they're both like, we got to go after this guy who basically did everything that we talk about, but never had the testicular fortitude to do. Trump didn't have the guts to put on the uniform. Hegseth didn't have the guts to do the right thing and become a quality leader while in uniform. So let's go after this guy who, by the way, when it comes to Mark Kelly, you can ask anybody in the Navy that knows him. They'll be like, hey, that dude's a great dude. Dude's a great dude.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying anything that's radical. I'm just giving you the facts. The facts are, show me the people who served with Hegseth that said he was a great leader. It's that simple.
It's that simple. I mean,
and so,
go ahead, Bobby.
No, and my last one is, and then the other 5 that are part of this video, Crow and Slotkin and all these people, they all have one thing in common. They literally put their lives physically on the line for this country. The country, not the president, not an individual, not a member of Congress, the country, right? And to hear these people pearl clutch while accepting 1,600 pardons for people who literally tried to destroy the country, shut the hell up. It falls on deaf ears. Here is my sympathy lamp. It's out. I have none.
I'm going to use that.
My God. You cannot come here at me and tell me that, oh my God, he said this to the troops, where they get it in basic training. And you guys have literally pardoned pedophiles walking the street right now.
Right.
Shut up. I'm old enough to remember. Shut up. This is ridiculous. Now, moving on.
Well, I just want to sit on that for just a sec.
Yeah, go ahead. I mean, that's fine. I'm just like, I can't.
I think we got to go back again. And you said a couple of things that really resonate with me. But the first thing is, what they said it's not controversial. Right?
At all.
You don't have to do illegal things. You don't have to do something that's illegal. That's what they said. And that's a rule that they could have wrote that out of the regulations, right?
Exactly. As a matter of fact, Sam, bring up that tweet of the president. There's one thing I want to point out.
Yeah.
When he says many great legal scholars agree that the Democrat traitors that told the military to disobey my orders as president have committed a crime of serious proportion. Disobey my orders. In the
Right.
clip, in that video, the 6 of them never said President Trump or his orders. They said illegal orders.
Right.
So by this man saying disobey my orders, he knows that the orders he's giving are illegal,
That's what I'm saying.
specifically with the Venezuela and the boat strike. He knows it because if he didn't think that, he would not say my orders. He would say orders.
Yeah.
He said my orders. He knows that they are talking about his illegal orders because they have not presented any case, any due process. They're just killing people. And for those who are on the right who may be watching and telling me, no, they're legal orders, blah, blah. We have this thing called BBSS in the Navy, Visit Board Search Seizure, where if you have suspected weapons and drugs, we will pull another boat up to you and then search it, get the evidence, arrest the people, turn them over to a Coast Guard. Okay?
Yep.
I was in charge of those teams. I know exactly what that is. We instead just blow them up. No evidence, no nothing. That is illegal. Trump knows it's illegal, which is why he felt the way he felt, because he got called out directly for it, even though the 6 did not call that out. He knows.
I think it even it might go even a little bit deeper than that, and maybe in a way darker, in that he's saying ultimately, like, what he could be going on in his mind is that he believes those 6 are saying don't follow illegal orders, and we believe Trump's orders are illegal. What Trump, I think, is really saying is that whether or not something is illegal is up for opinion, right? Because that's how Trump operates. Exactly. He operates under this weird ruse where the only thing, it's only legal or illegal if he says one way or the other, if he decides.
Exactly. Right. That's what we call a monarch. It's a monarch mindset. He believes his word is law.
Yep.
Which is why the senators said what they said. The reality of it is this. And people in the chat like, does he know if he's illegal? Doesn't he know? He has legal advisors that surround him, basically 24/7.
Yeah.
Most importantly, the Secretary of Defense has legal advisors, one of which I know personally, that advise them on the legality and the law of armed conflict is what it's called. Okay. Ignorance is not an excuse when you ran for president of the United States, period. No. Ignorance is not an excuse when you are put up for a cabinet position of any type, let alone Secretary of Defense, which is why people like Joni Ernst that signed off on Hegseth being Secretary of Defense, this is on her, which is why she ain't running again. See, people need to understand, for things to catastrophically fail, especially at the federal government level and national security, it's not one major break. It's a bunch of Swiss cheese holes that happen. The confirmation of someone unqualified here, the lack of national security strategy there, the lack of having an officer that understands the difference in legality appointed over these forces here. It's all of these little things.
It's death by 1,000 cuts.
Exactly. And then it all comes together. And next thing you know, you have damn near 100 people who were executed without any type of due process. None. And make no mistake, when I say this, I'm being very, very deliberate in my words. This is part of a larger plan. If you have watched Fox News in the last week, you've seen the Treasury Secretary, you've seen the representative out of South Florida. They are telling you the benefits of invading Venezuela.
Right.
If you think I'm making this up, y'all, Google Fox and Venezuela and see what pops up. They are prepping the battle space. They're in phase 0 operations of getting you mentally ready to do this because they're talking about oil. They're doing it in a blatant way that we have never seen before. The oil is there. The oil is there. The irony of it is Maduro has said you can have all the oil you want to. It's going beyond that. They want the kinetic war.
Yeah.
And they're trying to prep you for it. If you have not seen it, please, heck, don't even look at me. Google that now. This has happened in the last 3-4 days, and I've watched it. We're going to go to war unless somebody in Congress, somebody stops this in its tracks. And again, people ask, well, why would you do that? Epstein. Epstein, 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 Epstein. Anything to take that off of the front burner is what they're going to do. If that means fighting a war against someone who we picked the war to fight on, well, so be it. Let's see. Do they have ground troops? Patrick's asking, do they have ground troops in place to invade? So the short answer is yes. They have what's called an amphibious ready group in the area. An amphibious ready group is basically amphibious assault ships, one of which was my first ship.
Wow.
Where you have 2,500 Marines who specialize in amphibious warfare, meaning going from sea to shore to invade, take over a space, and then break it open for a larger force like an army to come behind it. That is the concept. And they have been floating back and forth in boxes, little operational boxes, for the last few weeks. They have now been joined by the USS Gerald R. Ford strike group, which provides combat air power to cover such an invasion, which is why Maduro has activated 2 million reservists on standby. And he's done heavy military exercises in the vicinity to try to show the Americans that he means business.
Well, man, there's so much here about
ask what you want.
And I think, let's start with big picture. You mentioned the acronym. I can't remember what you said it was, but when you come alongside the suspected drug ship, you board the ship,
BSS.
You confiscate the evidence, you turn them over to Coast Guard.
Mm-hmm.
Justice, right? Justice has been served. Now I know that the United States we've always had a sort of problem getting involved in other countries and this kind of thing. And I know there have been some, people who hated the drone strikes that even Obama did, right? Mm-hmm. Those were countries that we were engaged in, that we were already engaged in, that we had forces in, that we had long-standing conflicts with and were collaborating with, the people. That was a complicated. This is Venezuela. We're literally straight out murdering their citizens.
Yep.
Right. So we're skipping steps. We're just skipping steps. We're not doing the thing properly. And so I want to get to this point about, let's say we do have an amphibious assault. Let's say we have airstrikes. Let's say we start aggression. Probably not approved by Congress. I mean, maybe it is. I don't know if they're going to have a resolution. Are they even going to ask for it? What do you think?
I don't think they will ask for a damn thing, because they have not asked for a damn thing to do what's happening already, which even Republicans are complaining about in the Senate. What the hell are we doing?
Yeah.
There's no authorized use of force that has been asked by the current administration for these operations. This goes to the legality of what's happening. So when the 6 senators are telling you to obey lawful orders, part of that process is to get authorization from the United States Congress, specifically on the Senate side more than anything else, because they deal with foreign relations as opposed to the House, which is domestic. This is why I talked about this in American Civics way back when, because they are flexing and breaking protocol, law, and really the Constitution.
Constitution, for sure.
Right? So understand, they're not trying to ask for permission. They want to do what they want to do when they want to do it. Because here's the thing, what happens if you use VBSS and we go on board and we see that there's nothing there? All of a sudden, your whole pretense for what you're doing goes out the window. But here's the thing. The reason that VBSS teams, not just for America, but other countries have these too, is because we're supposed to collect evidence and show what is happening.
Right.
So not just the United Nations, not just the United States knows, but the United Nations knows, like, hey, that's suspicious too. This is on the same pattern of that. So you can actually effectively stop the drug ring that you say that you care about. Right. But we're not doing that.
No, I mean, look, speaking of evidence, right? Like when Bush wanted to go to Iraq in late 2002, early 2003, there was this run up to war, and there was, some marketing involved, and this, like, let's let's roll this out in the fall because that's when it's good. And then they ended up getting licensed to do it in like March, I believe, right? March 2003. They had yellow cake. They had the tubes. They had all of this evidence. There's not evidence of anything in this point. So I want to move a little bit into strategy in this, like just unwind what this might look like, because Maduro is he's a dictator. He's not, by all accounts, not very popular. He reasonably lost his last election, but refused to concede.
Admit it. Yep.
Right. And calling up 2 million people to defend the country, who are these people and how unlucky are they?
Well, what was interesting, a couple of things. I'm gonna answer multiple questions here at the same time. What you're asking, Patrick brought up another point. He said it seems like 2,500 Marines are a small number to invade. You need like tens of thousands. Well, a couple of things. Number one, there are different types of amphibious assaults. So the acronym DRAW, it comes to mind in military planning. That's, you can have an amphibious demonstration, a raid, or full-fledged assault, or a withdrawal, right? What we would be looking at is like a actual raid where you go in, hit hard, do some damage, and then withdraw quickly to send a message. That's possible. But here's the thing. The second you hit targets on ground, you're basically declaring war. And when you put a boot on the ground, now you're talking about a serious commitment to war. Going to what you said. Yes, an invasion, right? Now, going to what you mentioned, Sam, about, in 2003, the lead up, et cetera, et cetera. Part of what was so messy and clunky was looking for the excuse to do it. And because you didn't have a defined reason to go, you had no defined end state either, which is why we were there for 20 years. The last time America did something where it worked and it made sense was the first Gulf War Desert Storm. Here is why. Because the two main planners and executors, Colin Powell, who was chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and Norman Schwarzkopf, who was the commanding general of all of those forces, were Vietnam veterans. And in Vietnam, they recognized, they analyzed, and said the number one issue that we had in Vietnam was we could not tell you what victory looked like. There was no defined end state. So before the United States started the actual air war and then the ground war, which was under 100 hours, Colin Powell told George H.W. Bush, by the way, the youngest combat pilot in World War II in the Pacific, he got shot down. So all these dudes have been to war, right? They were very definitive on what it meant to go. Colin Powell said, if you break it, you buy it. That's what he told him.
Yeah.
You didn't have to explain that to Bush Sr. He knew exactly what that meant. So they said, here are the goals. We're going to go in with shock and awe, with our technological advantage, and then we go boots on the ground. We're going in quick, secure, and then get them out of Kuwait. End state. We're not going to try to occupy Iraq. And it worked beautifully. They dominated. They knew what the goals were, and they executed. Ever since his son came in and did the lead up to Iraq, we have been lost in trying to define that because politicians rely on the American military to help shape their policy when it should be the other way around.
Right.
I'll be very clear about when I say that. The United States military is not a peacekeeping force. We are not a diplomatic force, and we sure as hell are not nation builders. Those are all political aspects that have to be defined by the civilian population and the civilian leadership. And so what you have now off the coast of Venezuela are forces amassed where we don't know what the goal would be if they actually went kinetic. We don't know how it's supposed to look like. We don't know what the commitment of the United States would be in a conflict with Venezuela, because the people who are running this are rank amateurs. You have a Secretary of Defense who's been neutered and left out of the process. But even if he was in the process, he has no strategic training. He has no long-term, long-range strategic training ever.
No.
Okay? And a president of the United States who completely does not understand what the United States military is supposed to do. These are combination kindling, fuel, and we're one match away from fire. That's what I want to make sure everybody understands.
I think, you talk about objectives, clear objectives, clear goals, clear mission. At this point, we don't even have a clear cause, right? Like Hitler invades Poland.
Right.
You got to stop that, right? Like Russia invades Ukraine. That there's a cause for us to be engaged in a battle, right? It's just not exactly clear why any of this is happening. I mean, even with the centrifugal tubes and the yellow cake and all this stuff, and Colin Powell at the UN and all of this stuff, they were trying to say, we do have a cause. There's a thing that we need to do in order to stop something else, from happening. There's just nothing. There's nothing.
What they would tell you, what they would tell you is to stop the fentanyl from coming into the country, right? Drugs. However, if that is the case, ladies and gentlemen, there are two other things that would be happening. Venezuela would not be the sole focus.
No.
And your border patrol agents would not be as focused on immigration deportation as they would be stopping the influx of drugs coming in, both at the south and north border. None of that's happening. So they're not serious. Right. What this is a calculated political distraction for various things. Yes, I think Epstein files are definitely part of it, but your cost of living, your affordability, your health care, all of these things that affect your daily life, we as Americans have been calibrated to sacrifice if we are at war, right? We pull our purse strings a little tighter. We endure a little bit more pain because we want to support the war effort. This is part of that calculus, in my humble opinion. But the fact that you're seeing publicly on, Fox propaganda news that they're trying to soften your mentality to be ready to accept conflict, to accept war in Venezuela, while completely abandoning Ukraine, while completely abandoning maybe even Taiwan, while completely abandoning what's happening economically, should be everything that you need to know about their priorities. They need distraction. They need something that makes them look tough and masculine. They need themselves something that will try to revitalize the image of a man that may be literally dying in front of our eyes.
Yeah.
Reality.
Right. Look, the first thing Trump did in among the first things he did in his first term was pull out of TPP, right?
Yep.
Essentially, they had whatever you think of the structure of Trans-Pacific Partnership. It was a table of which we had the leading seat at, right? It was our way of defending hegemony essentially over the Pacific and inserting decision-making power from the West into Asian nations and he said, we don't need that. We don't need to have influence in Asia anymore. No. He pulled out of the Iran deal, and the Iran deal, and who knew? 6 years later, he has to bomb Iran because they're building nukes. Right. None of this is long-term thinking. And in fact, if you boil all of this down to those stupid fucking hats that say "Make America Great Again," nobody has ever defined great. Right? It is the vaguest, dumbest sentence and statement and phrase you could ever imagine, because he can't define great. What do you mean make America great? Great how? Well,
it's funny you say that, because the most detailed discussions I have seen him have is business that there is some personal or second or third order attachment to him. So when he talks about the Saudis and he talks about the money,
Right.
There's a second and third order effect when he talks about Qatar. There's a second and third order effect when he talks about Russia and not doing things to stand up for Ukraine. There's a second and third order effect to his pocketbook. That's where his mindset is. That is the detail. That is America being great. Now, conversely, Argentina, billion dollars bailout that he worked out. Even the American banks are like, we can't really do that. 40 billion, right? You make that deal while your own cattle ranchers in America are going bankrupt. I mean, this is not rocket science. And this leads into another point that I wanted to bring up tonight. The Department of Education, in this mindset of what it makes America great, the Department of Education came out this week and said that certain degrees that you obtain will not be considered professional degrees. Okay.
I missed this.
For those who don't understand what that means, a professional degree, a bachelor's degree and associate degree means there's a certain skill set and a certain level of expertise and apprenticeship that you have to have. So these are in education, nursing, typically master degrees,
Sure.
PhDs in engineering, things that Americans need to continue to operate as a country. Well, the Department of Education, by the way, which they're doing everything they can to shut down, the Department of Education said, no, we're no longer consider those professional degrees. Immediately, what that does is it lessens the impact and the value of the degree that people hold. If you have a nursing degree, now you're going to make less money because of this declaration. Now, people will ask, well, why would they do that? Especially when you have a baby boomer population that's so old and nursing, and we need more engineers in America. Why would you do that? Here's why. Because the overwhelming number of people that hold those degrees are women. They're women. Teaching, nursing, women. And if you get into the subset of that, Black women. Overwhelmingly, especially when you talk about education and nursing. The whole mindset of this move, which came out of nowhere, was to basically regress the mean of money that women can potentially earn in order for men who have been going to college less, been getting less degrees over the last 15, 20 years to surpass them. So a woman has to be more dependent on a man to have a certain level of income. They want women back in the kitchen having babies. That's what it is. Teachers are seeing this. Nurses have commented about this on social media. This affects their ability to negotiate with hospitals that, by the way, are being shut down thanks to the One Big Beautiful Bill coming to a neighborhood near you. All of this is connected. So going back to what you talked about when you say, what does making America great look like? Project 2025, which this is highlighted in, by the way, is not about making America great. It's about making America's elite more elite. It's about restricting and suppressing minority groups and women from having equitable income. It is about you not being able to afford a house, but we'll let you lease it, and corporations own it, and the wealthy own it while they continue to build generational wealth on generational wealth without you being able to do it. Right. And so now the coup de grace, you go into debt getting these professional degrees, and now they're worth less money, which keeps you in debt longer. And now your student loans are 15, 20, 25 years to pay back. It's diabolical. I mean, it's like comic book supervillain type shit. I don't think Dr. Doom would be this dastardly. It's that crazy.
Look, power has been entrenched in a set of humans in the United States for 400 years. And it's only become in the past 40 or 50 years more entrenched in a smaller and smaller subset of humans, right? Mm-hmm. And those humans who have power and wealth entrenched are doing everything they can to make it so forever. And
yes,
Andrew Watkins and I don't know if you know Andrew Watkins, Bobby, but you really should have her on.
We can.
She is incredible, but she grew up as a Christian fundamentalist, and and then got out of that, escaped basically. And when she read Project 2025, she was like, "Oh shit, I know what this is. I know what all of this is." And you're exactly right. The impulse, great to them. First of all, great is an evolving term.
Yes.
Right. Like
Yes.
but you're right. It has everything to do with white. It has everything to do with male.
Yep. Yeah.
And controlling everyone else.
Which is the irony of this whole thing. When I think, going back to our boy Hegseth talking about compete.
Yeah.
You don't want to compete, dude, because you get your ass handed to you when you have to. And Jackie in the comments raised a very good point. This also limits the accessibility to get graduate school loans by doing this, right?
Yeah.
So it's going to be harder to obtain. You're going to get worse rates, and you're going to be chained in even longer to pay it back. So the cost for you to live the American dream, which the American dream is you can start at the bottom and work your way to the top with good old hard work. Well, the tools and the access needed to do that, you are now effectively saying, here's another hurdle. Here's another hurdle. Here we go. And so my thing is this. You cannot expect a society to thrive when you make it more difficult to obtain knowledge. Full stop. Full stop. Yeah. The reason that America rose to the zenith that it did, it was not just because Americans worked hard. It is because we pursued education like it was nobody's business, specifically after World War II, to the point where we brought in immigrants that were highly skilled and highly intelligent, Nobel laureates. Heck, we even brought in former Nazis to get us to the moon. That's how much we wanted to learn. And in one lifetime, in one generation, we have flipped it around to where ignorance is preferred, because ignorance allows manipulation, and manipulation means you are controllable.
Absolutely.
That's simple. That's simple, people.
Look, I think, there's a world in which I think most of us in this chat and watching the show right now would say we need to lift up, right? We need Pete Hegseth. You're right. He can't compete. He can't compete on a level playing field, right? And so for men like him, the idea is we need to make it harder for everyone else, because I don't want to do the work to be excellent. I can't.
You know what they don't want to do, Sam? You know what they don't want to do? They don't want to pull themselves up by the bootstraps.
That's right.
Everything, because trust me, as a black man, if I had $1 for every time I heard a white person say that to me or someone in my family, I wouldn't have to work either. But here's the thing. When we do pull ourselves up by the bootstraps, then you want to change the whole damn game. Like, we're not talking about bootstraps anymore. We're talking about this environment over here, and you can't compete over here. I need something to keep me elite and you suppressed. The problem that you're running into, Pete, and this is why Project 2025 exists, in the aftermath of the civil rights movement, and then the birth of the women's liberation movement directly after, in those 15, 20 years, the mistake was you let too many minorities and too many women go and get educated. You let too many of us get educated in the schools that were formerly off limits to us. And so we know the game.
Yeah.
We understand what's being done. You know what I'm saying? Someone like me 50 years ago could not have had the educational track that I've had. I went to the best high school in the state of Georgia. It's got like a $200 million endowment as a private school. Right? I went to the Naval Academy is the #1 ranked public university in America right now. Okay. So the best, and continue to serve. You cannot sit there and tell me that I'm wrong when I can logically think, analyze facts, put things together. And I still have to deal with the micro and even macro aggressions of racism. I'm fighting through all of that. So if me and you are put on an equal plane, I'm going to kick your ass. I'm sorry.
I
got no choice.
It's for real. And this is the thing. I always think, like, there's so much talk about like, oh, boys are struggling, and I think there's something
Yeah,
for sure to that, right?
very much
There's a
so.
right, but people like Pete Hegseth, if you don't want to lose to minorities or women, then you better fucking work harder, man, because you suck.
But but
You know
but
what I'm
but, but
saying?
hold
Like,
on. But hold on. As as logic based as your thinking is, Sam, the fact that they are born with less melanin and a penis means that there are some things that just have to be gifted to them.
right.
That is the thought process. For Hegseth, and we're going to post the interview that we did with a congressional candidate that is an absolute badass that's running for
Yeah, we should get to
a
that
New
pretty
York
soon.
17. Yeah, Cait Conley. We're going to break off and go to that here in a second. The fact that Hegseth doesn't want to compete with her, they're approximately the same age because he
Mhm.
graduated Princeton. I want to say the same year she graduated from West Point. Hegseth could have went to West Point. He chose to go party, wanted to go to Princeton instead. Fine. He went to West Point. She graduates and then gets selected for special operations as a woman, doing stuff that she can't even talk about to this day because she was a badass. You should go to her website and y'all will see it. Hegseth, I'm going to go to
Great
National
interview.
Guard. I'm going to just chill. Then I'm going
Yeah.
to go try to make some money. Da, 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 da.
Eh,
Those two were both in the United States Army and National Guard. In the competition, who would you pick? Who would you pick? This is
I
my
mean,
point. It's like,
no,
come on, man.
your neighborhood's on fire, and you got to pick somebody to help lead you out.
Huh? Yeah,
It's not Pete Hegseth.
yeah.
No
th-
way.
this is my point. Instead of trying to suppress everybody else from surpassing you, man up. How about that?
Yeah.
Man
Yeah.
up, and maybe you can catch some of these women kicking your ass. Man up, and maybe you don't have to look at the back of my cleats as I pass you. Man
Mhm.
up and be the leader that you keep telling everybody else they need to be, Pete. How about this? Man up. How about you knock on the door and just have a conversation with the president about, I don't know, defense things? Since
I,
you are left at the kitty table, Thanksgiving's here, you got the big table and you got the kitty table. You over here with Tulsi Gabbard at the kitty table
I,
on national security.
Tulsi. Oh man. I
I'm just
I
saying.
I wonder about this, and I know we should get to the interview soon, but
Mhm.
um I think the incompetence and ineptitude of these people, the Tulsis, the RFKs, the
Mhm.
Hegseth, may end up saving us in the long term, but they really hurt in the short term.
It makes you realize that you cannot take any of this for granted. I keep going back to that Ronald Reagan quote about each generation has to fight and defend freedom and democracy. That's not just in war, that is also in the streets of your neighborhood. That is also in the halls of Congress. That is also at your state house, in your county commissioner meeting.
Yep.
It's everywhere, people. And for us to basically allow this to recap before we go to this interview, we have the president of the United States calling 6 senators who were reminding active duty military to not obey illegal orders, calling them traitors and seditionists and should be killed. The same guy who less than 6 months ago pardoned 1,600 people that maimed, killed, and blew up things. And on top of everything, he's having the FBI now look into each one of the 6 senators, using
Yep.
his political power as a weapon. Unbelievable. Because Lord knows if Biden or Obama would do this to any damn Republican, these people would storm the Capitol again.
Yeah.
I'm
And
old enough to
rightfully
remember.
so,
So,
actually. Rightfully so
yep,
with that.
just reminding them of their oath. You are correct on that, Sandy. So we need to transition. We y'all gotta meet Cait. This woman is
So
whew,
good.
she's intense. One of the things that we try to do is not just bring you people who have great ideas, but who have been there and done that. Okay. And when this young lady decided that she wanted to serve her country, there was no going back. And you can tell there's no 50% with her. Not at all. So what we want to do is introduce you to her. She's going to be in a primary. And then, of course, she's going for a very gettable seat in that move to flip the House in 2026. Her name is Cait Conley. She is a West Point graduate. I won't hold that against her. You know, someone's got to go to the Army anyway. But you need to hear the intensity of her experience and her story. And Sam, I just want to wish you and everybody at Lincoln Square a happy and safe Thanksgiving.
Same to you.
Be back right after the break, because unfortunately, tyranny and stupidity have no off days.
They do not. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody, and happy Thanksgiving, Bobby.
Yeah, same to you. Thanks.
Yeah, stay tuned for this interview. See you guys.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to this week's special edition of Anchor Watch. First of all, I hope you have a happy and safe Thanksgiving week, but I definitely am very pleased and honored to bring to you someone who once again has put themselves, their livelihood, their bodies on the line for this country, and now looking to do so in a grander scale. I would like to introduce everyone to Miss Cait Conley. She is running for United States Congress in the great state of New York, and she is a proud Army veteran, and that's not all she's done. So I want to basically introduce you to her, because let me tell you, Cait, I saw your intro video. I was like, finally, some teeth. Some teeth.
Let's get it, man. Yeah.
I mean, I love it. I love it. You know, she is awesome. She is someone that you would want representing you, but I'm going to stop talking and I'm just going to ask Cait, please give us a little bit about your background, because it is not just unique. It's a powerful, powerful story. So can you tell us, how did you wind up here?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, Bobby, thank you for having me and all of the important work that you do here at Lincoln Square and the broader Lincoln Project. Super, super privileged to be part of this discussion with you all. But it goes back to the Washington Post, right? They're saying democracy dies in darkness. And so thank you for what you all do to, I think, bring these important issues about America, right, to the surface and have the candid conversation. So, yeah, Cait Conley, proud West Point grad, Army Special Ops combat vet, and daughter of the Hudson Valley. My story, as pretty much as blue collar as it gets. So my family's lived here in the Hudson Valley for generations. We go back to my great-grandfather and grandfather who worked in the brickyards outside of town here called Montrose. And then my dad was a construction worker. My mom, she's been with the U.S. Postal Service for 48 years and still going. Yeah.
Wow.
But
wow.
Look, I grew up, there was a single mom raising me and my two sisters here in the Hudson Valley, you know, as working class as it gets. And I think about my childhood, and when we talk about the affordability struggles that so many families are dealing with right now, look, that's not just a hypothetical. My family's lived it. We're still living it. You know, I remember as a kid trying to find 50 cents and the couch cushions or a car so my mom could buy her coffee at the deli on the way to work to the post office. And so when you think about the values that my family, that the Hudson Valley instilled in me, I mean, Bobby, it's all those things that we learn at the academy, right? It is hard work, tenacity, courage to fight for what is right and to stand up for people, right? Those values, that's what these communities, my family instilled in me. So I was a junior in high school when 9/11 happened, and I went home that day and I was like, Mom, I don't know where the fight's going to be, but I want to be in it. So I'm going to West Point. And, you know, the Hudson Valley, we got rocked on 9/11. And I have to give Demi Moore tremendous credit, because I grew up watching G.I. Jane. And I have to tell you, I watched that movie more times than I can count. Like, I remember renting it from Blockbuster with my dad back in the days of the old VCR, baby. But so, you know, in that movie, she ends up going on the Navy side, the special ops route. And so for me, that was always my target on the Army side. And so my first deployment out to Baghdad, I got approached and recruited by the special ops community. And so out of my 16 years as an active duty Army officer, I spent the overwhelming majority of that, over a decade, in the special ops community. And then my last 2 years, so a lot of it I can't talk about, right? But the unclassified stuff, my DD 214 that I can, I did 6 overseas tours to combat zones like Iraq, Afghanistan, and some other places, fighting Al-Qaeda, then the Islamic State, all that stuff. And then my last 2 years in uniform, I was at the White House as the director for counterterrorism. And,
Wow.
it is hard after all that, Bobby, to think about the challenges facing our nation and to truly feel like the greatest threat to America's future and our values and who we are coming from within our own borders,
Bingo. I think you raise a very, very valid point, going back to when you were at West Point, you're training hard to prove that you're worthy to lead Americans abroad, to keep America safe. And you do all of this. And ladies and gentlemen, for those who don't know, what this woman has done is the elite of the elite. And as a woman doing it, which, Hegseth has said all these ridiculous things. You are the counter example, living flesh example of him being completely wrong, which is one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you. But then on the flip side of this, you do all of that to come home and to see us being torn apart from within, from the people that are supposed to motivate us to be better. I guess I'm answering the question sort of already, but what led you to take off the uniform, take off the expertise that you have, because you've done more than your fair share, and then say, I want to go do this too?
So, Bobby, I think the same reasons we rose our hand, so many years ago to say, send me. I want to get out there and fight and defend this nation I love. It's the same reason that I raised my hand to jump into this fight. It's out of love for this country that we are privileged to call home, and the firm belief that for 250 years, ordinary people in extraordinary times met the moment to live with courage, to put this country on the track to be the nation we are. And it is now our generation, our watch to fight to keep it. And I'll be damned if we're going to lose this, right, on our watch. And so for me, it was just, look, we have fought too hard, sacrificed too much, lost too many friends to watch politicians, and I would say on both sides, lead this country off a cliff. And agree. So I think the American people are sick of it. We're sick of it. We're like, we just want serious people, true leaders of character, who are going to put country before party and people before politics to solve the hard problems facing our nation. It's not complicated, it really is that simple. But damn, we make it hard.
Yes, it seems like we keep failing an open book test. That's what I've been saying to people. So when you look at the national landscape as a candidate for United States Congress, what bothers you across the spectrum? What bothers you the most? And then, what do people in Hudson Valley, what do they feel like is affecting them? What jumps out at you?
Yeah. And so where I think I am incredibly fortunate in so many ways is the Hudson Valley is such this awesome representation of, I think, larger America. When you look at my congressional district now, it's 4 counties, 28% of registered voters are unaffiliated or independent. So a Democrat or Republican can't just win this district with just their own party alone, right? You got to get people. You've got to get the voter to choose you as a person over a party. And I love that. I wish more of America was like this, because I think we got to get back to the place where politicians are trying to earn the vote and the respect of the people they're seeking the privilege of representing. And so when I look at this country, if you and I were having this conversation a year ago, before Trump was seated and started his second term, I would have looked you in the eye and said, Bobby, I am really concerned for America and our future right now, because we have some really hard problems in front of us that we are not effectively solving. And we're not even addressing in the full way that we need to be. And what I mean by that is, look, for this first time in modern American history, the economic prospects of young Americans are worse than their parents or grandparents.
Right.
We are facing a national security risk landscape that is more complex than we have seen. We've got Iran that can't even get water to its second largest city, but still doubling down on its commitment to develop a nuclear weapon. At the same time, they're providing one-way UAVs, so one-way suicide drones to Russia to support Russia's invasion of a sovereign democratic state, Ukraine. Right. And now that land war and the last several months just spilled over to Russian incursions into the sovereign airspace of NATO allies, right?
Yes.
And Bobby, but it just keeps going. You've got North Korea that's talking about expanding its nuclear arsenal when they're dealing with rampant famine.
Mm-hmm.
And now, look, climate change, I'm sorry, but this is no longer a scientific or moral debate.
Mm-hmm.
This is a national security crisis because you see how Americans are dying and communities are getting displaced because of extreme weather. Yes. We can't ignore this, right? And now you see, look, the oncoming job displacement that's going to come with AI and increased productivity. Where what are we doing to set up the workforce of today and tomorrow to be successful? We cannot afford to make the same mistakes we did when we offshored manufacturing and we left those blue collar communities hanging out to dry. Yep. We cannot make those same mistakes. And those are the issues we should be talking about, right? How do we meet the moment with an energy crisis? How do we deal with this economic transition? How do we meet rising unemployment with young Americans and give them hope that the American dream is still real? Like those issues are all over the Hudson Valley, and they're all over this country.
No, wow, there's so much to unpack there. I think you nailed pretty much everything that is in the forefront or should be in the forefront. And what's interesting to me is the current Congress, the incumbents, not many of them are talking about that. To be completely honest, not many of them are talking at all. They know, for example, hitting on what you're talking about, healthcare is going to go through the roof next year based on the one big, beautiful bill that they passed. They've already started shutting down hospitals in rural areas in particular. They know because of the unregulation that they're doing for AI, because all those guys donate to their campaigns, that there are going to be jobs, especially white collar, that get pushed to the side. You nailed it when you talk about young people, because right now, any poll that you see, the apathy, the lack of trust in their future in the United States is at an all-time low. When you have college graduates who have to live with their parents because they have no real prospects. And it's interesting when you say the Hudson Valley, I think a lot of people, when they think New York, they just think of the city and the 5 boroughs. Hudson Valley, as someone who's been up there, I have a daughter that goes to school up there. You're right. It is diverse as all get out, people from all walks of life. It seems like it's a nice weather vane to see what's going on around the country. Let me get your thoughts on this. Recently here, there were 6 U.S. senators who vocalized and reminded the current active duty force that they do not have to act on illegal orders. Now, you and I both know this is something that is hammered into us, especially as officers, from the time we enter whatever training program, whether it's a service academy, ROTC, you're hammered on this. And the fact that the current Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, is threatening to recall Senator Mark Kelly to active duty to court-martial him over these comments have been met with, lack of a better term, amongst many veterans, shock, outrage, a variety of emotions. I would like to know, as someone, like I said, who's been there and done that, West Point graduate, what do you think of the video, number one, and number two, the reaction of the Pentagon?
So, Bobby, to your point, I will tell you, while I worry about the future of our country, what I don't worry about is the unwavering commitment of the men and women in uniform to our nation and the seriousness with which they take that oath, that they swear to defend that Constitution, right? And so to your point, the leadership out there in uniform knows their responsibility to this country. And what I love so much about the military is it transcends politics. It is just about patriotism. And that does not know a party or a person. That is about this country and the Constitution. And so I have unwavering confidence that the men and women wearing the flag and that uniform will do what they are responsible to do. And so I will tell you, when I saw what seemed like threats of political violence being called for by our commander-in-chief against American citizens, Like, let's take the fact away that they're even politicians. We have the President of the United States calling for political violence against American citizens because they were articulating political opposition, what he perceived as political opposition. That is the part that scares me, because look, we have sacrificed too much generation after generation in this country to make America a place where political disagreements are solved by discourse and at the ballot box, not through violence. And to have elected officials calling for it is the most un-American thing out there, and against our own people. Come on. And so that really pisses me off, because what we're seeing is the normalization and the weaponization of the executive branch against political opposition that should never be normalized, accepted, or tolerated. And I don't care what party's doing it. Like, this goes back to the red, white, and blue, to America. And what we are seeing is such a dangerous slope, where this isn't the first time we've seen it in this administration. And they keep pushing this line further and further. And we as America cannot allow this to become who we are. We have fought too hard and sacrificed too much. America is so much better than this. That is what worries me and upsets me. You know, it's cowards who resort to intimidation instead of living with courage. Cowards.
Yes. You're absolutely right. What's interesting to me about it is it seems as though the president has a very short memory of his own statements, because when President Biden was in office, he said things that were much worse than what these people have said. And by the way, all these people said was basically, hey, it's on a plaque at West Point. It's up in Annapolis. There are things, hey, this is what you're supposed to do as an officer. You're supposed to be apolitical. And here's the thing, there are lawful orders and unlawful orders. Execute the lawful ones. This is not rocket science. It's nothing new. What really, I think, bothers me about the current state that we live in, me and you have deployed to countries where not only is this type of rhetoric normal, people act on it, and there's been instability because of it. And if we accept the current status quo of striking other nations without any proof, just killing their citizens, if we keep the political rhetoric to the point where you go out and you can be shot, you know, i.e. Charlie Kirk and Gabby Giffords, you know, Senator Kelly's wife, people forget about that. You know, these things of violence is the most un-American thing ever. And you're right, it's becoming more normal. And so if that seeps into our military, then what? Then what? You know, that's my concern too. Let me wrap it up with this. Everybody is stuck on the doom and gloom of what's happening around the country and America's ripple effect around the world. Can you tell me why you still remain positive, why you still believe in this thing called America, why you're willing to go back into the breach again, this time in politics for this country?
Because it's America, right? It is this country that, while we are not perfect, we are unwaveringly committed. And I guess while America is not perfect, we are unwaveringly committed to pursuing becoming a more perfect union, right? And if you are not inspired by the generations of sacrifice that ordinary Americans have shown in extraordinary times to make this country what it is, I don't know what else you could see or hear, right? When you think about everything from the American Revolution to uniting this country after the Civil War, to pushing for women's suffrage, for civil rights, for LGBT rights, right? To going out and defending the world's vulnerable. You know, I think about the missions we've done since 9/11. And, you know, sometimes I think we take for granted how much better we've gotten at the counterterrorism mission than we were in the days leading up to 9/11. Because let me tell you, I promise you, someone who's been in this space for 2 decades, There are groups all over this world trying to harm Americans every single day. But it is because of the men and women in the intelligence community and in the military that American families are safe and we don't worry about those things. But the reason I'm doing this is the same reason I rose my hand, same reason you did, Bobby. We love this country. And what gives me hope is America, right? We are a nation that has gone through so much. We have seen dark times and we have met the moment. And America isn't this incredible country because it's been easy. It's because it's been hard, but we keep getting better and stronger coming out of it. But we've got to step into the breach, like you said, and fight. This doesn't fix itself. You know, what motivates me is this is our turn to fight for the country that we leave the next generation.
Yep.
It's up to us to see how the end of this chapter in our nation's history is written. And I don't know about you, but like, damn, man, you know, time and time again throughout our lives, we've been called upon to take on really hard missions for this country. And we didn't say no. We stepped up and said, we will find a way. And so I'm with you. It is a hard time, but we will get our country through this because we've gotten our country through so much more. And I'll be damned if we lose this on our watch.
And I don't think you can put it any better. And I'm glad you said our watch because, you know, our generation, you know, this, you know, Gen X, whatever you want to call it, it's on us. You know, the baby boomers are turning over. They're about to depart the pattern. What are we leaving the next generation? Our kids, you know, the kids, you know, their kids. You're right, because I think we're at this tipping point where either we buy in fully to what America's supposed to be, or we will never be the same again. And it's so funny that's happening at that 250-year mark where we, as American citizens, have to make a decision. And you going to Congress, and this is my final point, there's a reason that Article 1 in the Constitution talks about Congress. You guys, those running for office, those in office, that body is supposed to be the ultimate representation of the American people. A lot of the stuff that's happening now is happening because Congress is not doing their job. They're not. People like you need to get there. So you have no fear, but like, no, this is what this says. 17 jobs that Congress is supposed to have, most of which deal with the chief executive. We're checking this. The American people need y'all to do that, to step up and be that body, something that inspires not just Americans, but the rest of the world. They have historically looked to us. And I'm glad that you said it's on our watch because it really, truly is. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been awesome to talk to Cait Conley, not just a veteran, someone who has done the hard things in a hard profession and is willing to go back into the breach and do even harder things. Cait, I can't tell you what kind of inspiration you are, even though you're a West Point grad. I'll let that slide. but
I was waiting for it.
But it's inspirational, and I can't tell you what it's like to be able to talk to someone who's dedicated their entire adult life to the service of others in their country. So thank you very much for answering the call yet again.
No, thank you, Bobby. Thank you for all that you have done for this country and for continuing to bring light. And here's to all of us seeing this country on the other side.
I agree. Thank you, ma'am. And we'll be in touch, and we'll make sure that your information is put out so everybody knows where to go to learn more about you and what you're doing in the Hudson Valley. Here's
to good people just doing the hard work for the right reasons. So starts with New York 17. Let's go, baby. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bobby.